Welcome to the Utah Retirement System's Employer Services webinar series. This webinar has been pre-recorded. Please see the description below for links to different sections within the video and other useful information.
Today's webinar covers the topic of military leave and the responsibilities that employers have to cover the retirement of uniformed service members when they perform qualifying military service. We receive a lot of questions on this topic, so we hope this webinar will answer some of those questions. My name is James Hammer. I am the Account Services Manager at URS. I manage our account analysts who calculate adjustments. Our account analysts perform many adjustment calculations relating to military leave situations. Let's begin this webinar with USERRA. USERRA stands for the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act of 1994. Per the Department of Labor, USERRA significantly strengthened and expanded the employment and reemployment rights of all uniformed service members. Uniformed service members include, but are not limited to, the following: the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Coast Guard. They also include reserve personnel, plus Army National Guard and Air National Guard. The law requires all employees provide their employers with advance notice of military service, which may be either written or oral, with certain exceptions. Because of USERRA, it is important to know that federal military personnel employed by your office must be provided retirement coverage if qualifying military service is performed and the employee returns to work within an approved time frame, and the separation from military service is under honorable conditions. We will cover each of these points in our webinar today to give you more detail on what these terms mean. What is qualifying military service? Qualifying military service consists of active duty under Title 10 of the U.S. Code. Title 10 establishes the role of the armed forces in the U.S. Code. Qualifying military service also includes service under Title 32 of the U.S. Code. Service under this title includes active duty training, inactive duty training, and full-time National Guard duty. In general, the cumulative length of service that causes a person's absences from a position may not exceed 5 years. However, there are many exceptions to consider that are too detailed and complex to cover in a webinar. We recommend consulting with your legal counsel for details on how this limitation may apply to specific situations your office may encounter. When your employee returns to work from a military leave, there is an approved time frame criteria they must meet to qualify for retirement coverage. If the service ranged from 1 to 30 days, your employee must report to work at the beginning of the next workday after the military service completion. If the service ranged from 31 to 180 days, your employee must file an application to return to work within 14 days after military service completion. If the service extended 181 days or more, your employee must file an application for reemployment at least 90 days within the military service completion. Here are some items to keep in mind about the time frames. First, the gap between the military service completion and the return to work date must be covered. There cannot be gaps in retirement coverage if your employee performs qualifying military service. Second, as is often the case with our laws, exceptions may apply to these time frames. One possible type of exceptional circumstance may include injuries incurred during the line of duty that make it difficult or impossible for a uniformed service member to return to work in a timely manner. When these cases arise, your office will need to consult with your legal counsel to determine if the circumstances constitute a valid reason to extend a time frame for an employee's return to work. Finally, our office will sometimes receive questions on what constitutes a return to work. Can an employee return to work for 5 minutes before resigning and still qualify for retirement coverage? Is it 1 full day, 1 week, 1 month? Unfortunately, we will not advise your office on what constitutes a return to work. You will need to consult with your legal counsel and determine that matter. Keep in mind that your employee cannot have any intervening employment, however, between the time they return from military leave and the time they return to work for you. Uniformed service members must be discharged honorably where this designation applies to be eligible for retirement coverage. However, this nature of service designation does not apply to all types of military service. It usually only applies to longer types of deployments when military personnel are discharged from regular active duty. To figure out if this designation applies, your office will need to ask your employee if they were issued a DD-214 military discharge document upon release from their military service, or you can contact the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs for assistance. If your employee was issued a DD-214, request a copy of this document. It will contain the nature of the service, which will help you determine what your obligations are. Retirement coverage payments. Your office's payments are due when the USERRA requirements are met. Of course, your office will not know if the USERRA requirements are met until your employee returns to work, or perhaps your employee does not return to work after their military service has concluded. Nonetheless, there are two ways to make payment for retirement coverage. One way is to pay during the employee's leave period, in which case your office may avoid paying interest so long as the payments are submitted in a timely manner. The other way to manage the payments is by paying for the retirement coverage upon your employee's return from service, once your office determines the USERRA requirements have been met. This method will require a calculation by our office and will usually include interest on top of the contributions. If your office decides to make payment during your employee's leave, you will need to keep your employee on your contribution report and base the payments on whatever retirement salary your employee would have accrued had your employee continued to work for you. If you pay during the employee's leave period and the employee does not end up with qualifying military service, you will be refunded the pension contributions you paid, plus certain savings plans contributions. However, gains on the contributions will not be included in the refund. The employer process from departure and during leave. Complete sections A and B of the leave notification and send a copy to URS along with a copy of the military orders. Continue to report regular contributions during the leave period, or wait to see if the employee meets the qualifying service criteria and then request an adjustment upon the employee's return to work. Here's the employer process once your employee returns to work. Complete Section C of the leave notification and send the leave notification form along with the DD-214, if it applies, to our office. Along with this, your office will need to determine if the leave qualified for retirement coverage by applying the criteria we discussed earlier. If the service qualified for retirement coverage, no additional communication is needed, other than a breakdown of your employees' pay rates during their leave period, assuming you did not make contributions during their leave period. If this service did not qualify for retirement coverage, your office will need to communicate the reason for the non-qualifying leave in writing. Non-qualifying leave. If a non-qualifying leave period exists, our office will refund pension contributions and certain savings plans contributions to your office, assuming your office paid contributions while the employee was on leave. Next, our office will notify the employee in writing of the reason your office provided for the non-qualifying leave. Questions the employee may have on the reasoning you provided for the non-qualifying leave will be directed back to your office. Keep in mind that your employee does not receive service credit for the ineligible leave period. And finally, the situation is documented in the employee's file and the case is closed. Now for qualifying leave. If your office reported contributions for your employee during the leave period, the process is complete once the leave notification and the accompanying documents we discussed earlier are received in good order. If your office did not report contributions during the leave period, our office will calculate an adjustment. Interest will typically apply. We will then send your office an invoice for what is due under Title 49. If your office determines that additional savings plans contributions are due based on your office's policies, please make payment for those contributions at the time you make full payment. The employee will then receive service credit for the leave period once your office makes payment. And finally, the adjustment documentation is forwarded to your employee's file and the case is closed. I hope this webinar has been helpful. You are welcome to contact me or our department with questions. Have a great day.